Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Gavin here, back another video. Today's episode, we're taking a look at the Pulverize in-game build. I'll leave a link to this specific build planner in the description of the video. If you guys want to click on it, just click the link. It'll take you out to this exact same page, and you can kind of follow along with us. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. So we have a couple key things that make this build work. So this build is going to revolve around our Pulverize. And you can see here when we hover over our Pulverize, we have a couple things that light up in our items. That is going to be the Shockwave Runic Gloves. So this specific aspect here, Pulverize creates a shockwave that travels forward, dealing a whole bunch of damage to its targets in its path. And then we also have Insatiable Fury here. So Werebear is now your true form, and you gain ranked to all your Werebear skills. So this is really nice because Pulverize is a Werebear skill. So that's one thing that's very important to note is if we go over Pulverize, we can see that is an Earth skill, and it's also a Werebear skill as well. So anything that benefits those two specific tags are also going to benefit our Pulverize. Now, another thing that really factors into this build is overpower. So we can see in our modifiers down here, every 10 seconds, Pulverize is guaranteed to overpower and make enemies take 20% more damage for 5 seconds. So that is going to come through our Rotting Lightbringer here. So if we take a look down here at the special effects, if no puddle is around you, Pulverize forms a puddle that guarantees its own overpowers, and it deals 600% of its normal damage as poisoning over 7 seconds. So this is going to work sort of like a stacking effect, and you can kind of put pools on top of one another that overpower, and sort of triggers this chain reaction of overpowers that deals a whole bunch of damage. Now, one of the things that makes this possible to do is if we go down to our Hordric Spellcraft down here, you can see that we are running Celestial Surge on our Pulverize. So you can see that Pulverize is on our last slot here, and Celestial Surge is also in our last slot. So just make sure that wherever your Pulverize is, you're putting Celestial Surge with it. You're pairing those two together. And just read it out here. Awaken an Oracular Rune that pulls in all surrounding enemies. So that's what we're looking for out of this, is your Pulverize will group all these mobs for us. They will put them all in like a puddle from your Rotting Lightbringer. And that's where you're getting all this large funnel of damage. Now, we have something else that actually funnels into this as well. If we go to our skill tree here, you can see that we're running Ursine Strength. So gain a maximum life, 26% more damage, and 106% overpower bonus while in Werebear form, and for 8 seconds after leaving it. So you see that we do have another synergy of overpower here as well. So let's talk a little bit about our forms now. So we talked about earlier, right, through Insatiable Fury, Werebear is now our true form. So we are always gaining this key passive down here, this Ursine Strength, if we are wearing this unique chest armor. So this is a very important piece. And another thing I want to talk about here is our Grizzly Rage. So you can see that we're running that. So Grizzly Rage, shapeshift into an unstoppable dire Werebear for 20 seconds, gaining a whole bunch of damage reduction, and that damage bonus is it has like a stacking effect while you stay in this form up to a maximum of 100%. Now we can actually extend this, and Grizzly Rage is very key to this because while you're within Grizzly Rage, you are basically in like a sort of Super Saiyan form, and you want to maximize your uptime on Grizzly Rage as much as you possibly can. So if we look at the modifiers down here, you can see we are unstoppable while we're in Grizzly Rage, and we're gaining max life as 4 to 5 per second while within Grizzly Rage. So that brings me to a couple different aspects here. So you can see that we are running 2 different aspects for Grizzly Rage. So let's just read out the first one here. And this is going to be the Rabid Bear aspect. So while Grizzly Rage is active, your direct damage is converted into poison damage, and you passively spread something called Rabies. So the Rabies effect isn't that effective. It does give us a little damage amp, but the poison damage is actually very important in this. And the reason it's important, right, is we talked about earlier about how Rotting Lightbringer has like a poison effect. And what we want to do is we want to tag as many mobs as we possibly can with this poison effect, and that's due to Envenom here. So you and your companions gain a 50% bonus critical strike damage against poison enemies. So this kind of looks like it's a poison build, and it kind of is, but really we're funneling more damage into critical strike through Envenom. It's really a critical strike build more than a poison build. So we want to apply that poison tag as much as we possibly can. So our Grizzly Rage will now apply that poison tag for us. And sorry, I was hovering the wrong item here, but this is the poison effect from our Grizzly Rage. And then right below that, we also have the duration of Grizzly Rage is increased by 10 seconds through our Rampaging Werebeast aspect. So this is where that damage amp really comes from, is through the critical strike that we're getting from the poison effects. So in addition, critical strikes while Grizzly Rage is active increase your critical strike damage by 5% for the duration, up to a maximum of 100%. So these two are kind of working in parallel along with our Envenom. And we also get a ton of critical strike damage through our Avian Wrath down here. So let's go ahead and talk about which boons we run. So Druid works kind of off this boon system, and you can pick 5 out of 16 of these different boons. Now you can actually bond 2 of these together, and we choose to bond both Avian Wrath and Swooping Attacks for the attack speed with the critical strike damage amp. So the other boons that we're running is a Gift of the Stag. This will give us more maximum spirit, and it's also going to give us some spirit regen. We also have our Energize, so dealing damage has a 50% chance to fully restore your spirit. And then we also have Masochistic. Critical strikes with shape-shifting skills have a 75% chance to heal you for 10% maximum life. So again, more things are just funneling into critical strike. So that was kind of long-winded, but that's kind of the general build overview, and that's kind of what we're going for here on this build, is to funnel poison, which funnels into critical strikes and overpowers. So let's first start with itemizations, and we'll just kind of work our way down here, and then we'll kind of go through skills and talents and whatnot. So starting out on our headpiece, we'll be running Vasily's Prayer. So your Earth skills are now also Werber skills and fortify you for 5% of your maximum health. So this is really nice because that goes very well with our Pulverize here. You see it has both the Earth and Werber tag, which means that each strike of our Pulverize is going to be fortifying us, which is really good for sustainability. We're also running Insatiable Fury. We already talked about this. Directly below that, we're running Shockwave Runic Gloves. Directly below that, we'll be running the Shockwave Runic Gloves. We talked about this earlier as well. You can see the tempers on this is going to be Earth, Critical Strike Chance, and Pulverize Size. So most of your tempers are going to be going into Pulverize, Earth, Werber, and Grizzly Rage. That's going to be like the 3 or 4 pillars that your tempers kind of synergize around. Directly below that, we're going Tybalt's Will. So you deal increased damage while unstoppable and for 5 seconds after. And when you become unstoppable, you gain 50 of your primary resource. This is very nice, right? Because if we go back and look at our Grizzly Rage, it grants us unstoppable in that first modifier. So we have a way to reliably proc this. If you have very high uptime on your Grizzly Rage, you're pretty much permanently unstoppable as long as you can keep that effect up, and you can kind of permanently proc this. So very nice there. We also have the Ursine Horror Boots. So this is what makes our Pulverize an Earth skill. And if we go back to earlier through our Prayer Helmet, we can see again those Earth skills fortify us. So very, very important to have both these boots in synergy with this helmet. And then going down, we have the Rotting Lightbringer, which we talked about earlier. And this is going to give us that overpowered damage, and it's also going to give us that poison tag that we're looking for to convert to critical strike. Now, one thing that I did forget to cover is our 2 runes that we're running. So in our Prayer Helmet, we're running Bach and Gar. So basically travel 5 meters and you will gain Offering. And then the Offering spend effect is, again, 5 critical strike chance for 5 seconds up to 25%. Okay, moving on to our weapon, and I actually had this wrong a little bit earlier in the video, but we're actually running a Nagu and Quacks. I think I had Igni in there. So let me bring these up really quick. The reason that we're running Nagu here is due to the summon effect here. So contain at least 1 active summon for up to 5 seconds, again Offering for each up to 6 summons. So the reason that we run this is due to, let me see if I can find it here, our Ravens here. So our Ravens is going to be one of the skills that we run, and it has the summon tag on it. So the passive effect, summon 3 Ravens to fly above you, attacking enemies. This is also going to give us critical strike chance from the Ravens. And we also will summon from the second modifier 2 additional Ravens. So that gets up to 5 Ravens that are proccing this Nagu sort of summoning effect, right? So it goes up to 6, and we can get up to 5. The other rune that we're running here to use that Offering that we're building up is Quack. So casting a skill other than a basic or defensive, which is going to be our Pulverize, consumes that primary resource to increase your damage up to 100% for 1 second. Now, moving on to our jewelry, I talked about this for the most part already. Right, these first two are going to be focused around our Grizzly Rage. Grizzly Rage gets converted to poison, which then gets converted into critical strike. And the way that that poison is getting converted into critical strike is through our Envenom here. This right here. So you and your companions gain 50% bonus critical strike against poison damage. So we want to apply that poison tag as much as we possibly can. So mainly going to be applied through our Riding Lightbringer and our Grizzly Rage if you are running these specific aspects. And the final aspect here is the retaliation aspect. Your core skills does up to 75% increased damage based on your amount of fortify, which goes hand in hand with your headpiece. Again, that Pulverize now counts as an Earth skill, which grants us the fortify effect. Okay, so we've talked about Pulverize quite a bit. We've talked about Ravens quite a bit. We've talked about Grizzly Rage quite a bit. Let's go ahead and go into Cyclone Armor. So one of the main reasons that we actually take this is due to its passive damage reduction, which does persist, and it goes into our Grizzly Rage, right? So you will maintain that non-physical damage reduction even when you're within your Grizzly Rage. So it stacks, just like a stacking effect. You just have to make sure that it maintains on your skill bar to get that passive effect. Now, during your Grizzly Rage, you can only have Werber skills on your skill bar. So this will actually transform into Debilitating Roar here. So let's take a look at this skill. But you see we have two modifiers on it. The first one is this will fortify us for 30% of our max life, and then we will deal 25% increased damage while this roar is active. But again, just know that whenever you go into your Grizzly Rage, your Cyclone Armor will turn into Debilitating Roar. And you also get to keep the passive effect from Cyclone Armor. Now, another skill I want to talk about here is our Wolves. So we talked about earlier about how Ravens will actually proc our Nagi here. So also our Wolves count as a summon as well. So we have Ravens and we have Wolves. So this one is actually what gets us up to that 6 target count. I don't have the Nagi rune up anymore, but it goes up to 6 total summons that you can gain offering from. So this is what gets us up to 6 is by using Wolves in parallel with Ravens. And the final skill here that we have is Poison Creeper. Okay. And then we also run Poison Creeper for the same reason that we run Wolves and Ravens. And this is going to apply that poison tag again, which is converted into critical strike damage. So through all of these summons, we're able to generate a ton of offering through the Nagi rune. All 3 of these summon spells all synergize with the Nagi rune. So if you don't have the Nagi rune, you could run something else besides this. But yeah, okay, moving on. We talked about the boons already. Let's go ahead and go into, I guess we'll go into the Hordrick Spellcraft. So obviously we're going to be running Corrosive Vapor in this build. It's going to apply that poison tag for us, which is then converted to critical strike. It just makes sense. We're also running a Bloody Charm here as well. So this is going to give us an execute actually through our Celestial Surge. And we do get some CDR from this as well. So if you read the bottom here, successful executions reduce your cooldowns by 2 seconds. So this is great because this is going to give us more uptime on our Grizzly Rage. So very important there. We also run a Sapping Crux here, which is going to apply our vulnerable effect for us through our Catalyst. So that's going to be the main way actually that we apply vulnerable in this specific build is through our Catalyst and then Shifting Powder as well for that increased movement speed. Another popular one that people are running is Fractured Core to remove that damage resistant aura effect. So if you do not have Sapping Crux, you can run Fractured Core. And then I guess the last thing here is let's go ahead and go through our Paragon board here on the very right. You just press this Paragon tab and press this little square and it will bring up this page. So your start here is going to be Fang and Claw. So you're going to be Perma Warbearer. So this is going to be a pretty strong glyph for us. So increased damage while shapeshifted by 10%. And you kind of see these green nodes here. Once you do max out your board, you can come back here and sprinkle in these green nodes to get a more bonus effect from your glyph. Directly above that, we're going to be running Ancestral Guidance with the Dominate glyph. So Ancestral Guidance, after spending 75 spirit, you deal 40% increased damage for 5 seconds. So as we spend more spirit, we deal more and more damage. And you also get a stacking effect from this as well. Your ultimate skills deal 1% increased damage per spirit when cast. And then for our glyph, this is going to funnel more into overpowered damage. So not only is it going to give us more overpowered damage, but when you overpower an enemy, all damage you take from us will be increased by 50% for 5 seconds. Over here on the left, we're going to be running Survival Instincts with the Outmatch glyph. So if we take a look at survival instincts here, so if you look at survival instincts here, while in warbear form, you deal 30% increased damage or 45% when you're at full life. You have 1% increased overpowered damage up to 25% for every 1% difference in current life percent and 4 to 5 life percent between you and the enemy. So this is kind of like an execute node almost. And this also goes pretty well with our Arcana that we talked about earlier, the Bloody Charm that grants us the execute. So just something to keep in mind there. We're also running the Outmatch Glyph. So just a flat increase to our damage. And then we will do, if we meet the requirements from the surrounding nodes, you deal 15% increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses. Directly above that, we'll be running Heightened Malice and Spirit. So Heightened Malice, while a poison enemy is nearby you, you deal 35% increased damage plus an additional 5% for each additional poison enemy up to 4. So again, another reason that we want to apply this poison tag, and you'll really notice this rune taking effect when you do jump into your Grizzly Rage. And then for our glyph, we are running Spirit, so increase critical strike damage by 14.2%. And then if you meet the bonuses here in the middle, critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from you by 3% for 20 seconds up to 15%. The more you critical strike, the more that stacking effect that you get. And then our final board up here in the top right, we're running Earthen Devastation, Earth, and Sky. So Earthen Devastation, your Earth skills, which is our Pulverize, if you're wearing the unique, deal 10% increased critical strike damage, increased by 20% of your damage versus crowd control bonus up to 60%. And I actually don't think I covered this earlier, but your Pulverize also uses the modifier for increased damage against crowd-controlled enemies. So if we go back and we take a look at Pulverize, you see it has the crowd control effect on it in blue, and that's due to our helmet here. So very, very important that you pick this helmet up. Like everything literally synergizes around this helmet as well as this weapon. So that's how this specific board works. And if we take a look at the glyph, so it increases nature magic skill damage by 10%, which is great for our poison effects. And then nature magic skills deal 10% increased damage to crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies, which we apply both of those. All right, guys, that's been to this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys in the next one.